Hello, welcome back to the channel 12-Step Guide with Troy O. Today we are continuing our fear list, step 4, column 5. Now, largely we have operated out of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. In AA, we'd call it the AA Big Book. And column 4, we touched on the 12 and 12 step book. Today, we're not going to do any reading. Those in largely today, I'm speaking to those who have followed along. And why is that? Now, if you've just come on and you're just trying to get a basic idea today about what's happening, that's all right. If you're trying to actually understand the fourth step here in today's video, you'll be left with the question, what happened? I encourage you to go back and get educated. So we have covered in how it works in the big book, what I call a master key section of step 4. And so today we're going to make references to that because we've covered that exhaustively. We also covered in the step book, step 4, just a couple of pages, and I'll make references to that today because we need to get to column 5. What is column 5? So for me, column 5 is basically a deduction based on what we've done so far. And so what do I mean by that? So we know that we have begun step 8 within step 4. And we know we have reviewed what I called the master key. So just coming back to that for a couple of references in an effort to get to column 5, because now that we've begun step 8, my knowledge of the remainder of step 4 in the big book, how it works, it doesn't go backwards. We continue on with building our step 8 list in step 4, and let me use a couple of things to support that. So Bill said in that, what I call the master key, our list, or lists, I think, held the key to the future, the master key, that reading. We're prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. That angle is from step 8. How have we harmed others? And seeing how this process took place. We're looking for our own mistakes, he said. More in that chapter, he said we admitted wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. Now, we're a little early on that. That's just willingness. We're not doing step 8. We've got a long way to go. There's a reason for this process. So when we do get to step 8 and 9, we don't blow it. That's important. Don't spoil a later opportunity. Give it time. Now, Bill had, in our resentment list, and then to column 4, Bill had made it real clear fear was a major issue. So it follows that when we then began our fear list, we're still searching for and better understanding our wrongs. So that follows. Again, but also how we arrived at these problems to better understand what makes us tick so we can make adjustments and overcome this malady of alcoholism, tearing us apart, or the codependency, or the anger, or gambling, overeating. I mean, the list goes on and on, whatever your step 1 is. And finally, to support this fully, when you go to step 8, the first thing it tells you is, this is step 8 in the big book, we have our list. We already have it. We made it when we took inventory. So based on all that information, it follows that today we're looking for our harms. And I believe that part is that simple. So now what I'd like to do is spend the rest of the time reviewing some basic information in our list to get to what those harms might look like. So one in our list, and again, this is people that have been following, because should have a good idea. You should have a list in front of you, or at least an understanding of what's going on here. So column 4, we're searching for instincts in collision. Instincts gone astray. Instincts run wild. You may have heard, when you're looking at things like pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, sloth, vainglory. Let's translate it to other viewpoints. Power drunk, dry drunk, drunk with lust, or drunk with having been pursued, or afraid as a result of having been pursued. It matters what the issue. You're being pursued, say in high school, you're good looking and everybody thinks so, and you feel good about that, but maybe someone else was pursued at good looking and that it wasn't appropriate, for example. But this concept of to be drunk, to be the instincts in collision, instincts run wild. There's something about us that goes to some sort of extreme. I believe it's an altered state of mind or body leading us to be high or drunk mentally. Now, we've established the brain has the ability to influence us chemically. And so, what are some of the examples of what that could look like? So you feel like you're doing something wrong mentally, emotionally, physically, that maybe it harms someone or ourselves, but you continue to push past that. Maybe it's stealing, what it feels like to sneak and steal, cheating, but other examples that aren't necessarily a bad thing, or pursuing someone that you might like to date, and the feeling of asking them, and the nervousness and what it feels like in the body becoming altered and overwhelmed. These in excess in certain ways can have considerable influence over us. So, like, for example, when someone's building up to drink, they're oftentimes mentally drunk long before they pick up the drink. It's just so they could still come back from that. Just as someone out there lusting, something goes wrong, they can clear up in a hurry. But when you load it up on drugs and everything's all screwed up, or the drink or whatever, that's a different. Once you induce and put chemicals into your body and continue a cycle. Now, Bill, when he talked about things, he used the word procession. I suggested death spiral. And so what do I mean by that? Because it doesn't necessarily lead to death for everybody. Everybody doing a 4-step, maybe you're an AA, maybe you're a codependent, maybe you're a gambler, overeater. It doesn't necessarily lead to death for everybody, but what can it lead to? It can lead to a downward spiral. He had talked about, again, a leading procession, but it represents a failure, certainly a death, some type of destruction, maybe loss of family, maybe loss of a job, goods that you might have, your health, respect. It is a negative. I believe it's also important to acknowledge healthy fears in your list. Those healthy fears can help to keep you on track. Afraid of walking a tightrope, afraid of burning our hand on the stove. These are good, healthy fears. So I've largely been talking about, the alcoholic, heavier stuff, but I had talked the last time about a luxury, step 1. But there's also the death spiral, step 1. So those are two extremes that they're very extreme from each other. So, and then in the middle is a whole lot. But let's say the luxury step one, just for example, a codependent and says, "Oh, this pride and greed and excess and lust and anger, gluttony, envy, sloth, vainglory, that doesn't apply to me. I was the victim." Well, now we're getting somewhere. First, to some degree, we were all victims of these, whether it be from family, community, friends, strangers, war, government. But if you can't see this one way, but you can adjust the lens, you can walk around all sides of it and you say, no, no, that wasn't me. I didn't do those things. I was the victim of those things. Well, you adjust that lens so that you can see how these things affected you in that way. Because in that way, it allows you to better see what happened. What part did you play? Could this happen again? Um, Maybe you picked baddies. You like the bad ones somehow, but at some point that goes wrong. Maybe you attract weirdos and abusers, and you don't quite understand why, or your intent doesn't match the outcome. Maybe your sense was these things don't happen to me, but they did. Pride. And could it happen again? Is there something that you can do or change to help with this? Now, other 12-step programs, and Al-Anon sponsor, for example, would be in a better position to help you, say, during step 5. But so you're, no matter what side of this you're on, you may be the victim of it. You may be the victim and the offender. You may see it in other areas, whether it's a boss, again, government, somehow family. The better you understand it, the better you can build a defense against it and make changes to protect yourself, strengthen yourself, better yourself. It depends on where you're coming from, because we're going to get into this column 5, the harm done to others, to ourselves, to the community, to society, if any. Now, it matters, there may not be a harm. I used an example last time, the kid that was in 9th grade there. In that example, no harm had been done, not yet, not unless something evolved, but in that example, it was just an innocent example. However, in some other cases, maybe you were harmed, the children were harmed, the community, your job. So let's use a couple of examples. When it comes to examples, these are just examples. There's as many people as there are as many examples. So I can only, and it's on my only intent to get only to a certain degree. And this isn't a fixed, perfect, here's the directions, rigid process. No, it's on wheels. You adjust it to where you can best see it. Hopefully these examples in my descriptions empower you to be able to get the rest of the way. Here's a clean copy of the examples we'll be considering today. You can see all 5 columns are filled out. I have some abbreviations in there next to affects my and my mistakes. You can see the harms done other list that we'll be reviewing. So we had used the example, my wife, what she'll do now that she caught me cheating. And we're just going to jump to column 5. We covered the other columns previously. So what does the harm look like there? Well, the wife was harmed. If there were children, maybe if the marriage breaks up or fighting, they're harmed. The other party's family, maybe who you were cheating on, also had a husband or wife and could have affected them. Maybe your job somehow has affected you cheating at work, and that suddenly doesn't go well, or it affects the community somehow. You're a community leader and that went bad. So examples like that, that's the harm. We also harm ourselves in this context, I believe. So the boss, what he'll do if he catches me stealing? Well, you're already affecting the business. You're certainly putting yourself at risk, potentially your family. Customer prices go up. How about myself? When I get angry, can hurt myself. Use drugs or alcohol, I can hurt myself and others. Well, clearly we're hurt, but we can hurt the family. Others can get hurt when we hop in the car and start doing stuff we shouldn't be doing in the car. A significant other. This is not an easy one. Again, many examples, and there's nothing the matter with some of these questions. Maybe they apply, maybe they don't. You find what best fits you. Do your best to be honest. Is violent. I've left them and have a restraining order against them. Certainly in this process, yourself, children, maybe if there's children, friends could be harmed if you don't do the right thing, for example. How to best protect yourself. Going back to prison. I'm going to ask you to give me a little leadway on this one. I'm going to take a little liberty on this. I'll let you know. So, this clown drug dealer that I spoke about, this is a real example here. This happened to me. It's a large motivation for why I'm doing what I'm doing here today with you. So he went back to the jail now for the 3rd time. He's hurt himself. I seen the family hurt. The son, the grandson, the wife, the ex-wife, the actual wife, the dog. I got to witness these pains. Property owner. Hey, look at other examples. A bank, if you have a loan, if you had a job, that can be an issue. So in this list, we've been able to identify with him the harms of others. But you know what's, and I'm going for the liberty now, you know what's not on this list? The people that he's helped. And do you know why? Because there isn't any. 3 times in jail now, long stints. The last time was 5 years, and this guy come out untreated. I couldn't find anything, and I'm pretty good at this stuff. Took me 2 minutes to figure it out when I met him. And the reason that nobody's being helped is because of the structure of our society. We feel like we're doing the right thing. Johnny Feelgood, right from the cop, makes the arrest. That's great. The judge does his part and the jury does their part, and we get him off to jail and everybody's happy. And then what? He came back out again and did the same thing again, and then the same thing happened. He come back again. Here's a drug dealer. We're not treating drug dealers because we don't know how. Well, I got some suggestions. And while we wouldn't confront this in AA, this isn't AA, I asked for a little liberty. So let's just look at it for a second, the harm resulting. So let's imagine a scenario. He had fear of economic instability. I made myself a little chart here to to go by. So I just want to give you an idea of where I'm looking at it. So fear of economic instability. So he sells drugs, uses and buys drugs. That leads to committing crimes to support the habit. Hangs with others using drugs. Maybe an overdose, a DUI, influences others, hurts the family. Goes back to jail. That's statistically likely if you've been there once, because we're not treating the root. So you get out of jail, untreated cycle soon begins again. Or we treat the real problem. And that requires us to understand it and to be willing to look at it a different way. As with alcoholism in 1935, Bill W. So the alternative can be, in some, maybe they change, but maybe he sells drugs and he goes back to jail, or instead treats the problem. So what do I mean by how could we treat the problem? It could be different in this. So he gets arrested for selling drugs. So imagine a scenario where now you enter a state program to countermand the previous behavior. If you want to know the good ones from the bad ones, find the ones that want to help themselves and help others, and the ones that don't, well, we understand that. So you teach a message at arraignment. What am I saying? Here's a guy nixing every morning he's down, and he's teaching this message to people at arraignment. You know who needs to teach this message? Him, that drug dealer. You know who doesn't need to be teaching this message? Me. In all fairness, I've been sober 38 years. I needed this sort of thing, this step 12. Maybe he joins part of a DOC group, which includes participation, learning, and teaching. You're attending groups of other DOCs, you're learning this stuff, and then you're teaching it. How about community networking? Education includes admitting wrongs at schools, community events. You know, back in 2000, myself, a corrections officer, and parolees, we used to go to schools. We set up a deal where we'd go to schools and we would talk to kids about drugs, alcohol, and them going to prison. And you might think we were doing that to help the children, and that's great. And the children were a great audience, and they learned a lot. But the people that were being helped the most were the parolees. They honestly and sincerely sought to convey a message, a positive message. Now, we didn't bring some imbecile that didn't care about anything but himself. They're not hard to find. But this really had a positive impact. So I just thank you for listening. We'll move on. So I have the next example on our list. How about the person in 12-step recovery that's stuck on step 1? What's up with that? I mean, hey, look, I was told to stay on step 1 for a year back when I got sober by everybody. But so what's this greater fear? What I might uncover? Maybe it's overpowering, afraid it'll be overpowering. I'm not ready. Others say, stay on step 1. Do you know what I hear? You stay stuck. Stay sitting in your shit. Affects my probably failed self-reliance, failed self-confidence. Hey, cocky gone wrong. Probably could see that. Well, burning the candle at both ends, but now we're sober, but afraid to move on. Maybe we'll identify some acts of resulting in humiliation. in where we're at with calamity and serenity on that scale. Are we struggling with lack of faith? Is that why we can't get up to 2 and 3? Do we lack courage to change? Maybe. These are worthy questions. Have I been a good example? Is your pride affected, do you think? Maybe. How about greed? Any greed in there? Did greed get you to where you're at? Any lust going on? It could be. Any anger? Gluttony? Envy? Sloth? Vanity? Standing in the way? What about the potential harm being stuck there? Because the longer you stay stuck on step 1, the closer you're out of the door. Because the stuff wants to come out. It wants to come out, and the more it bothers you, the closer you are. And yes, going to meetings and talking about the common problem is good. It's important. It's very helpful. But we can do more safely. We can do this step 4 process as Bill showed us, as Bill did himself. Bill started step 4 10 days into his treatment at the hospital. By not doing it, we risk hurting ourselves, our family. Maybe we're dry, drunk, angry, and pissed off, and nothing's any good because we're stuck. Maybe others can be hurt if we relapse. So I encourage you to start looking at step 4, understanding it in the videos. It's a safe process. We don't barrel into it or race into it. Ease into it. You got the time. Go to meetings. Talk to the sponsor. Talk to others. Figure out what drives you, what makes you tick. Let God speak through others. Give the process a chance. So this concludes your fear list in Alcoholics Anonymous Step 4. So from here, we're going to go on to our new list, our next list, and you're in for a real treat, I'll tell you. 1939, what Bill's going to get into next, is quite interesting. And I appreciate allowing me a little liberty there. In step 12, as we progress out in our lives and we better understand this, and how can we better help others? Because as we're helping others, we're helping ourselves. As I'm helping you, I am helping myself. I'm better understanding this material, honestly, for the first time. Some of it. Well, thank you very much for listening, and have a nice day.
If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Ring the bell to be notified when new content is added. Also, you can support the channel 12-Step Guide with Troyo by donating through PayPal to hsworldservice@yahoo.com. In Step 4, we are laying the groundwork and planting seeds for the 9th step promises. Those promises are: we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Keep moving forward. It's worth the effort.